So today we're going to talk about observables in Angular, and I'm going to show you how to use them and make your code base more efficient. My name is Marty Ballard. I'm an independent developer. I've worked on Android, iOS, and web apps, and I currently lead a team of Angular developers in Houston. So when I go to look up what an observable is, I find definitions like these. An observable represents an idea of a callable collection of future values or events. And to me, when I'm trying to understand a new concept, it just makes me want to bang my head against the wall. This isn't helpful at all. I'm looking for real-world examples on how to implement these new ideas. So we're going to try to avoid doing that today. My goal is to present observables to you in a simplified manner so that you can walk out of here and you can go and use them in your own apps. And then speaking of apps, I've written an Angular app that I'm going to share with you guys. We're going to walk through the code base. So we're going to go through the definitions of what an observable is in the slide deck, and then the main part of this talk is going to be looking at the app I wrote and reviewing the code and showing you guys how it actually works. Okay. So to me, observables are about simplification. So take a look at this web page that I wrote for a client last year. It has multiple components and they all need to interact with each other. The main component is the video player component, which is outlined in yellow. And then under that is a video post component. And then there are many video post row components, or video row components. Before I understood how to implement observables, I utilized event emitters for all the communication that was needed here. I had an event emitter that went from the video row component to the video post component, take the message up the chain, and then the video post component emitted the messages up to the video player, and that brought things like the URL for the video to play and some other data as well. And then the video player component then emitted data to a canvas component that sits on top of the video player. So that's what drew the annotations. So I had a lot of code to do all this, and it worked, but it was a lot of code. So now I removed all the event emitters, and I have a single observable. The observable is when a user interacts with the video post row, it updates the observable, and both the video player and the canvas component are subscribed to that, and they receive the data so they can present the video or draw annotations on the screen. So JavaScript is a synchronous language. Many of the things we do require data to be fetched, and this takes time. And waiting for the data to be retrieved causes blocking, and that leads to a poor user experience. So what is an observable? It's part of the RxJS library. It's a tool for working with asynchronous data streams. It helps us solve data management issues by returning multiple values over time. It's subscribable and callable. It's baked into Angular, and to me, it's a lifesaver for developers. So there are 6 core components of an observable. There's the observable itself, the observer, the subscription, operators, the subject, and schedulers. So we're going to go through each one of those. I'll try to give you some examples, and then we'll go see them in the code. So first, the observable object represents an object that provides push-based notifications. Another way of thinking about this is an observable object is that it provides a stream of asynchronous events over time. And like a stream, where the water just continually flows, our data is continually flowing in our apps. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. First, we have mouse events. Mouse events can include clicks, hovers, and movements. A good example of this is you click and you add an item to your shopping cart. The user selects an item, and then the observable can push that into that item into the cart for you. You could also click on a button to increase or decrease the quantity in the shopping cart. The next example is user inputs. The user has to fill out a form. They add their shipping information into their shopping cart. The observable will then push that information into your shopping cart as well. And then another common example is HTTP request. So as we request information from our Facebook feed or Twitter feed, which I thought this GIF really represents what a Twitter or Facebook feed really looks like. An observable can be updated over time to show how that feed is updating and changing. So you can receive new posts. And you can use the same thing with HTTP request and response. Then there's the observer. The observer object represents a collection of callbacks that knows how to listen to values that are delivered by the observable. The observer has several jobs or functions. It watches the observable. The observer listens to an object. The observer listens to the observable object for value changes. The observer notifies you when changes do occur. And then, unlike a promise, an observable can have many observers. This is great when you have multiple components that need to have data from a single action or event, such as the video player that I showed you just a minute ago. Then there's the subscription. A subscription represents the execution of the observable. It is primarily useful for performing post-data manipulation or unsubscribing to a observable. And there are two ways to subscribe to an observable in Angular. First, in the TypeScript. So here you see a little bit of TypeScript. I have a service that I'm calling .getObservable, and then I call the .subscribe, and then from there it returns the next value, which is represented by get. So there are three types of values that can be retrieved. There's the next value, an error, and a complete. Next is the only one that is required. Error and complete are both optional, but they do have to be in that order. Error returns if there's an error, obviously, in your processing, and the complete always returns whether the callable is completed or if an error occurs. So you always receive that. And then the other way of subscribing is to utilize the async pipe. The async pipe manages the subscription for you, and it's done all in the HTML. You would set a variable. So in this instance, I have Marty's get. I set that equal to my Wendy's service.getObservable, and then in the HTML itself, I let the async pipe manage that. Yeah.
So is this only available in Angular 2?
Yeah, 2+. I don't know if it's available in AngularJS. I don't remember it being in there previously. Next are operators. Operators are methods that are called on an observable object. An operator is essentially a function which takes an observable as an input and then generates another observable as the output. The original observable is not. The original observable stays unmodified. And then some examples I have here are map, filter, reduce, lab map, defer, interval. There's a ton of them, literally. And here's a link. I have published these slides, and you can go and pull up all of the different operators there and take a look at them. There's way too many to discuss in 45 minutes. Okay, so the next component is subject. So the subject represents a special type of observable. It's both an observable sequence and an observer. The subject acts as proxy for a group of subscribers. Subjects can multicast notifications to all the subscribed observers. And the subject maintains a registry of listeners like an event emitter. So here's the one drawback on a subject. It does not maintain state when the component loses focus. And I'll show you how that works when we go and look at the app in a few minutes. But that to me is one of the problems with a simple subject. There are, however, three other variations of subjects. First is the behavior subject. So this represents a value that changes over time. It has an initial value that you have to declare on initialization, and then the observer can subscribe and receive the current value, the initial value, and then any subsequent values that that change after you subscribed. And the behavior subject does maintain state when focus is lost. So I use behavior subjects a lot in my Angular apps because they do maintain that state, and they're very easy to help you keep track of where you're at. And I'm going to show you a really good example of that. Then there's two additional subjects that I have not used a whole lot, but I can explain how they work. The replay subject, so it records a buffer. It records multiple values from the observable execution. You can set that buffer size, so the number of values that you want your user to be returned. New subscribers receive the values from the buffer and any subsequent values. And it does not maintain the state either when focus is lost. And then the last subject type is async subject. The async subject represents the results of an asynchronous operation. It only delivers the last value of the observable, and it only delivers that value when the observable is complete. And it doesn't maintain the state when the focus is lost. I don't know who the person was that had to write the async subject. They probably had a really good idea, a really good reason for needing it, but I can't think of any reason for wanting that. So, okay. The last component is the scheduler, and it's just like it would sound. It controls when a subscription starts, when notifications are delivered, stores and queues tasks based on their priority, and then it marks where a task is executed for tracking, and it has a virtual clock to track when it should be executed or when it was executed. Okay, so those are all the components. We're going to switch over. Give me a second to switch and put the code up here on the screen, and I'll show you guys how this all works. I'm going to reconfigure this real fast, so give me just a minute.
This is brought to you by Motorola. Put a projector on your phone.
There we go. Now we have everything online.
We need an app that's hold music for presentations.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Could you get a Jeopardy theme song on loop?
Yeah.
It always calms presenters down.
Yes, yeah. Nobody gets anxious.
They type that in the studio, by the way. They can hear it, the contestants can hear it.
Oh.
That's how they know how long they're there. Final Jeopardy. Terrible.
Have you done it?
No. Very hard to get on the show. I guess the questions are a lot surrounding me. One of our coworkers did it though.
Oh.
And lost.
Okay, that's not going to be big enough, so we're going to switch this. This will be better. I pushed this all up on GitHub this morning, so I was having to do a little bit of work on it. Okay. So I assume if you're in here, you're familiar with Angular, right? And the structure of an Angular app. So everyone's familiar with the service object, right? And a component. So I created this little app called Windy City Observables. And so the first part we're going to go look at is going to be an observable itself. So this observable, switch over to the code first, see if you guys can actually see it. Make that bigger. Is that readable to everybody? Okay, cool. So I on my ng-on-init, I'm just I have a variable Marty's get the type of any, and then I set that equal to an observable with an interval, which is one of the operators I mentioned earlier. The interval runs every 3 seconds. So then I call switch map, and I am bringing back all the events from my GitHub. So anytime I do a push, it is recorded, and then that returns back. I'm calling the map, and I'm mapping it to JSON. Okay. So let's go look at. Here is my observable. It's running every 3 seconds in the background. As I mentioned a minute ago, and I just thought something that's not going to work well. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a push real quick. But I'm in the right directory. Yep, I am. Okay, so I just committed that file, and you notice that the last updated, here it says updated README. So now I have to fill like 25 seconds because this actually has to get pushed up to Git. Git has to recognize it, and then my observable interval is running every 3 seconds. So in a minute, we're going to see that change, and if all goes well, you know, we're in the middle of a session here, so probably won't ever update it. In just a second, that's going to change here for us, and we're going to see the last little commit push where I updated that file. This is where we need that whole music pick, the whole slide box. Come on, anytime now.
Do you have a GitHub API key? I know they're pretty aggressive. Or are you not using their API?
I'm not using their API. I'm just querying my events. I'll show you that again in a second here. Is it gonna work? It should. Wi-Fi is supposed to be really good here. This is Google. Yeah.
Go back to the code in the meanwhile.
Go back to what?
The code.
Yeah. We'll come back to the screen in a second.
So why did you use a switch map instead of something like a do method?
I was trying to find an easy way to do this, and this is the easy way, just to pull that the GitHub events.
Okay.
So I was just looking for something simple to run, since I didn't have another data object to push in there. So.
Okay. The reason why I asked, like when you use the map versus a flat map, right?
Yeah.
There are differences, like they combine the streams and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if there was something, some reason like that for using switch map.
No, I was just looking for an easy way to get this for the conference. So let's see if it updated. Hey, there we go. So it updated while we were away. Okay. Yay! Thank goodness. Okay. So now let's go look at the subject observable. So before that we do that, I'm going to go back over to the code, and you guys have to bear with me as I make these big enough for everyone to view each time. So the subject subject view is made up of a subject view component and a subject sub component. So here's a TypeScript, and so I have a service called Windy Service, okay, for Windy City DevFest, and then I have a method called sendValue, and I'm taking the value that is being pulled in. I'm calling this.windyserve.setCurrentView, and I'm passing in that value, right? So the value itself is just coming from the HTML. I just have an input, and then on my key up, I'm just grabbing the value. Okay. Then the service itself is where everything actually happens in this one. So I have this variable called view. It's equal to a subject with the type of any. And then down below, trying to make anybody dizzy here, I'm going to have to go up and down a couple times here. I have a couple different methods. I'm calling setCurrentView, which is what we saw in the last in the TypeScript file, where I pass in that string value, and then I'm calling this.view.next. So I'm passing in the next value, and I pass that to an object with the key of view and the current value, current view as my string, right? So when I do that, here's my subject. So it updates the div below that you didn't see, which is the subcomponent. So the subcomponent itself is where the subscription is happening. So in here I have a variable called service val, and then on init I'm calling windyserve.getCurrentView.subscribe. So there we go, I'm subscribing to it like I showed you in the slides earlier. I get the next value, which is B, and I'm setting this.serviceVal equal to V to the with the view key. Okay, and then I'm also logging it so we can see it in the console log if we want. So I have the value that I put in here just a second ago, and like I told you when we were going through the slides, if the component loses focus, the value is going to be wiped out. So I'm going to go back to the Windy City Observables tab and then come back to subjects, and it's gone. It doesn't retain the state. Okay, so however behavior does. So immediately when you come in here to the behavior, you see that there's the div below has a value of hello. The reason for that is I created that in the service. So my service, I have a variable called behave, which is set to a behavior subject, which has an object with a key of text val and a string value of hello. So that's the initial value that is set. And then I'm doing pretty much the exact same thing with my functions. I have a set behavior view, which takes in an object this time. And I call this.behave.next, pass in that object, and then I have a get view as well, a get behavior view, which returns an observable, this.behave.asObservable. So if I go look at the code for this, it's very, very similar to the subject code. I have that send value again, it takes in the value, which is a string, and I pass that in. I call this .windyserve.setBehaviorView and pass in that object. And then again, the HTML is pretty much the same. It has an input on key up, it passes the value each time. And then down in the behavior subcomponent, it's the same kind of thing we saw. I have a string value for my div, and then I go subscribe to that and pull that value out of the string. Okay, so let's go look at that actually. So here I can say, hi there, and it updates as well. Then I can I can remove my focus and come back, and it still says hi there. Okay, so this is interesting and all, right? It retains the focus, but it's not really a real world type of example other than just showing you I can keep the state. So here's something that I actually have used in the past. This one, this tab that I called switcher. So there's four boxes there. I can click on them, and they're going to make something different happen for each one. These are also behaviors as well, behavior subjects as well. So let me show you the code for that first, and then we'll go look at what they actually do. First, I'll go to the service. So I have this variable called switcher. It's a behavior subject, and again, it takes an object with a key of switch, and the value is just an empty string. And then my methods are very similar: set switch and get switch. Returns that I set the object that I'm going to pass in, or I return the observable on a get switch. So the difference is, here's my TypeScript. So I have a variable called switch watch, set to any, doesn't matter what it is. And then on a init, I subscribe to get switch, and then set the switch watch equal to the value that it returns back. Okay. And then I have another method called select switch. Yeah, so I'm getting the switch. So yeah, I'm getting the switch there. And then I have a select switch as another method. So when I click in my HTML, it's going to call that. It's going to pass in a value, and it's going to set the next value. So what this is going to do, when I click one of these buttons, it's going to show a new div. So switch 1 was clicked, switch 2, switch 3, switch 4. Okay. So I'm on switch 4 right now. I can go away, go to the Windy City Observables, go to the behaviors. So my message hi there is still there, and then come back to the switcher and still knows where I'm at. So I used this exact setup in an app that the video player app that I showed you earlier. On that app, there are many components when the user goes in to see their team. They can go in and see a footage tab, which has all the games listed below. They can go to the roster tab, which shows all the players and coaches. Then they can go to a feed tab where they can go see all of the they can make comments to other players and things like that. So I use this exact behavior subject setup to hide and remove components from that page because I didn't want to go reload the page each time I changed tabs. The component was already loaded, so when the user went to visit that page, everything was pretty much pulled in from one API call, and I called all the components below, built it out, and I didn't want to keep switching back and forth when a user was clicking on a button. So it makes it really fast, and my client is very, very happy about it actually. Okay, and then the last example we're going to see is the replays. So let's go look at the code on that. So we have a variable up here, set a replay. I know my naming convention is pretty wild and crazy, very creative. So it's replay and it's replay subject, and then it has that buffer size of 3. So that, remember I said we could return back a number of values. So this one I'm saying that I'm going to return back 3 values. So the methods that are set up down here, I have a method called setReplayView. It takes the current view as a number, and then I'm just doing a for loop here. So I have a for loop that is looping through when the value is less than 4. So that starts at 0, 1, 2, 3, and then 4 it won't run, right? So we have 4 loops that are going to go through. And I've set the buffer size to 3. Okay, those 2 numbers are important, so let's keep that in mind. And then the get replay view is exactly the same as the others I've set up. It returns the replay as an observable. So when I go look at the code for the replay, basically you see the same kind of thing. I have a method called sendValue that takes a value in. I should have declared that as a number, but I didn't. It works as long as I don't hit a vanilla letter. But I should force it to be a number. HTML is very similar to what we've seen already. The key up takes that value and passes it in, calls the sendValue method. And then my replay sub component, it has a couple things. It has a replay value variable that I've set here to an empty array. And then I have a method called getSubscribe. So when I call that, I'm calling the Wendy's service again, I'm calling getReplayView, and then I'm subscribing, it's getting the next value. And then it pushes the replay value, it pushes to the replay value that next component. So let's go see how that actually works in real life. So somebody think of a number between 1 and 9. 7, all right, I like it. Okay, so I subscribed, and let's open up the console so we can see that. So you can see that the replay subject just, well, I don't know why I did 3. Okay, so when I subscribe to that, remember it's going to go through that loop 4 times, right? So 7, 8, 9, 10. So, and we're going to get the last 3 values back. So I'm going to click subscribe, and we're going to see what values. Anyone? All right, 8, 9, 10 it is. So I click that, and I see 8, 9, 10, because it returned back the last 3 values. The funny thing about this is every time I click yes, it's going to go create another subscription. So I can click yes now, and it returns back 8, 9, 10 again. It's not the same 8, 9, 10, it's the new 8, 9, 10. The way I can show you that and prove it is I'm going to change this to, say, 5. And what do you expect to see back? 6, 7, 8? You're not going to see 6, 7, 8 back. No, that was a good guess. You're going to see 6, 6, 7, 7, 8, 8, because we have 2 subscribers. Oh. Yeah, 6, 6, 7, 7, 8, 8. And a 5. 5. Okay, well. Oh, because it returns the, yeah. So anyway, but every time you subscribe, it's going to create a new subscriber. And I can keep doing that to get the 6, 7, 8. So, that is officially the end. Questions? Yeah?
Is there any performance overhead for using, I don't know, say like 50 observables?
the most I've used is 3, and there hasn't been any kind of performance overhead that I've been able to notice. You probably at some point would get some kind of performance overhead if you went to do it. But I've only had a case where I need to have 3 as my max.
Okay.
So I can set that up and try it. So cool. Yeah.
What are like the telltale signs? Oh man, this is getting complicated. I should use an observable.
So, like the video player, I had to have an event emitter go from the video post row, and then push it up to the video post container. Then another event emitter push that data up to the video player, and then another event emitter push that to the canvas. I mean, it was just like I'm shuffling the same data around over and over and over again. I'm like, yeah, there's got to be a better way to do this. So I finally figured out, I can use an observable behavior subject that actually retains it. And at first I was trying to do just an observable or a subject. It would retain the state. So it just didn't work. But the behavior subject retains the state, so you can pass that single object in multiple components and subscribe to it. So once you start passing data from up a chain of components to, say, a parent and then a grandparent, that's, to me, is kind of getting a little bit too complex. I think there's got to be a better way, a simpler way to do it. So, anybody else? Nothing? Okay, with me. Okay, so I thank you guys for all coming. You can get the slides here on the slides.com/Marty Ballard, and that's the only one I've got in there. And then you can also go download the app. I published it on GitHub, so you can go download it and play around with it. All right, thanks a lot, guys.